Hello, I'm Deanna Cooney. Welcome to this week's episode of Undercurrent. In the wake of the recent terrorist attack in Christchurch, WTV reporter Tony ETC takes a close look at multiculturalism in Australia.
We are back again at the Multicultural Centre to talk to Mr. Ramdas Sankara. He is the president of the Ethnic Community Council of Western Australia. He will be sharing his opinion about multiculturalism, terrorism, hate speech, and most importantly, the incident that took place in New Zealand last week.
There's been a lot of dog whistling going on, from our political and leaders, and indeed vested interests in the media, trying to divide us on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of faith, and unfortunately, the religion that has copped most of it has been Islam. This wasn't the case when I first came to the country back in the late 70s. People of Jewish background and indeed Asians, particularly Chinese, copped it sweet from the Jack Van Tongerens of the world. We have replaced the racism, the vilification and the racial abuse and hatred in the latter part of the last century to the beginning of this century with Islam at the forefront. We're looking elsewhere for the so-called enemy, if I can use that word, whereas what we have now found out is that it is within us, not outside of us, but within us. Indeed, he was what we call a mainstream Australians, not the sort of people that unfortunately the government of the day has been blaming in recent times in terms of the so-called threat to our nation. This is something that we need to come to terms with. And we cannot come to terms with this unless and until we first and foremost be comfortable with our identity. Identity as a people, identity as a nation. And this is where I think, we've got a long way to go. Hate mongering is unfortunately the worst weapon of mass destruction the world has known. All of it comes back to one word, and that is hatred. Pathological hatred. Indigenous people have been in Australia for 120,000 years. Now, as we well know, non-Indigenous population of this country started just over 200 years ago. In other words, just about 1.5% of the history of this nation is attributable to people of non-Indigenous background. And yet when it comes to identity as a nation, where do we bring our Indigenous people in? Evidence or recent incidents are highlighting the issue of so-called white supremacy. We are now using the words of white, right-wing extremist, and that encapsulates what our White Australia policy was. Major things that are missing now as a nation is first and foremost to have a Multiculturalism Act. And once we have that legislation in place, then we need to look at mechanisms, a national anti-racism strategy, a national language services policy, a national policy on substantive equality. Then we will stop doing what we unfortunately have been doing for decades. Things like racial profiling. So I think it's important that we look at religious discrimination and ensure that the Racial Discrimination Act is extended to cover the vilification and the persecution that we have seen, particularly in recent times, people of Islamic background. We talk about terror, and terror is, at the end of the day, in very simple terms, fear of what can happen to people when they're least expected. That's what sets terror aside from other things. When dressed in a hijab is walking innocently on the road, and the same would apply of people of African background. If we continue to criticize the community as criminals, how do they go about their life with dignity that they are entitled to like the rest of us? When we stereotype people the way our politicians and media interests have been doing, in a way we are engaging in a form of terrorism. Unless we learn to respect, to accept each other, and convey that not just in words, in action. It comes back in terms of equity. We have to end alienation. We have to end exclusion. We seek to make this an inclusive society, to remind them that limitless freedom of speech is not in anybody's interest. And limitless, particularly when it comes to to hatred. Perpetuation of hatred, there is no place for that in civil societies like Australia.
I am Tony ETC, reporting for Undercurrent.
All summer, we've waited for the footy to return, and it is back. For this week's Vox Pop, Tegan hits the streets of Perth to hear your predictions for the season and to find out whether you think the Eagles will end up on the top again.
Do you watch the football?
No. No.
So do you have any interest in it at all?
No.
No. Any clue who you would think would maybe win the premiership this year, or?
Hopefully the Eagles.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Footy season's back tonight. Are you excited?
Yes.
Who do you go for?
West Coast.
Who do you think will end up on top this year?
Richmond.
And who do you think will be the wooden spoon?
Carlton.
So footy starts tonight. Are you guys excited?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Excited.
Yeah,
Yes,
can't wait to see.
Definitely.
Who do you think will end up on top this year?
Well, yeah, Freo, go the Dockers. Probably not, but that'd be nice.
No.
But do you think maybe what's happening with Jesse Hogan is going to affect them this year?
I think it's been beat up a little bit. I don't think it's as bad as what the media makes it out to be.
I'm sure he'll be playing round 2. He should do.
Who do you think will win the premiership this year?
The Eagles will probably give it a good run again.
So do you enjoy AFL?
I wouldn't say I don't not enjoy it. It's just I don't follow AFL. Yes.
But do you think who would you say would end up on the top of the ladder though? Do you think?
Oh well, I'll always go for the Eagles or the Dockers, depending on how they're going in the season. Go for a West Australian team. Yeah.
So footy season is back tonight. Are you excited?
Reasonably.
Who do you go for?
Essendon.
And do you think the Eagles have been underestimated this year in terms of being on top or anything like that?
I think yes. Generally they are. Everyone just seems to discount them, but they won it last year, and I think pretty good chance to go again.
Do you think the Eagles have been underestimated again this year?
Not really, because people have taken notice from last season.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if the Eagles have another shot. Not again.
Not like last year, I don't think. But I think they'll do okay. Yeah.
Have you heard anything about Jesse Hogan? Yes. Yeah. Do you think that might affect Fremantle's performance this year?
No.
Do you think what's happening with Jesse Hogan will affect Fremantle?
I think any of the key position players that are under a cloud like that can impact a team, certainly. I'm more concerned about the fact that as soon as someone does something wrong, everyone shouts mental health. Yeah. How much reality's in that, I'm not so sure.
I don't really know what's happening with Jesse Hogan. I'm not sure they know. I'm not sure anyone knows, but they seem to have a lot of field issues. I hope it doesn't affect him. What I've seen him as a player, I think huge potential. So I'm really hoping he gets back and plays, and same with Harley Bennell.
This has been Tegan for Undercurrent.
Up next, T-Boss speaks with Ian Garden, Managing Director of company Rig Deluge, who recently won the Safety Innovation of the Year award.
Today, for Undercurrent, we got a very interesting story. It starts with this medal, or probably starts before. Ian Garden is here with me, who is the winner of this medal. Tell us how this is.
Well, basically, September 2018, through Oil and Gas UK, in association with Step Change and Safety, I won Safety Innovation of the Year award. That award was for technology that solves a very, very old problem. It's mainly oil and gas. It's onshore, offshore oil and gas facilities.
And safety of what part of the industry?
It's the broadest term of safety. So they looked at different aspects of safety within the industry, and we deal with fire safety. And it came out trumps, it came out first. Several hundred safety-focused individuals were in a room. They reviewed all the other technologies. They reviewed all the other safety initiatives, and they saw the Rig Deluge free flow technologies, and they voted for us. We came out first.
That's good. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Firefighting companies took their designs, their technologies, and they implemented to the offshore environment. And unfortunately, even at a commissioning phase, these firefighting systems were failing their compliance tests through the blocking of deluge heads. And it's a completely different environment. When it's been tested, it hasn't been tested for blocking. It hasn't been tested for impact. So the things that happen with seawater is, even from source, contamination comes into the delivery line, and very small pieces can block and fail these deluge heads. Well, you know, as they started to fail, they decided they were going to take them out, they would clean them, and then they would put them back in again, and hopefully get a pass. Now, those passes were never set at 100% of a system. So, you know, there's nothing set in stone. Fortunately, we can set 100% in stone because of the technology. Now, remember that these have failed during real fires. Through real fires, these have failed.
So what is really causing steel in that saltwater environment?
Any type of foreign bodies, but even dirt. It's just because they've never been designed to pass a blockage test. When I came along, I didn't look at thinking, how can we tick a box? How can we achieve a compliance standard without actually fixing a problem? So I looked at it and I started doing some testing. And eventually we came up with a CFD adapter. So we are saving tens of millions of pounds because we know we're going to have a reliable system when water goes through that system.
So what is your system fail rate? So with the percentage?
100% pass.
100% pass.
100% pass.
That is.
You'll find that pipelines will block before nozzles will block because the performance is that good. We make sure that system is fully operational. We flush our headers. We make sure that it's tested properly without doing a wet test. And we do those checks and we record those checks. And then once every 5 years, we do the full wet test. We get 100% pass.
The industry reaction?
It's been nothing but positive. We are actually looking to do local manufacturing.
So you're looking for Australian local manufacturers for this one?
You know, it would make sense to, you have the steel, you have the materials, you have the manufacturing capabilities. We have the protection for the IP. Now remember, a brand new system has been recorded, 6 months old, failing in the event of a fire. So bad that the main delivery line burst. So there was no firefighting, no system. So the fire crews had to go in and actually put that fire out, isolate the fuel, put the fire out, endangered their lives, endangered the environment, and we've mitigated that. We've stopped that. We can actually allow it to perform as it's designed.
It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me.
Wonderful innovation, and this was Tibor for Undercurrent.
Don't go too far away. We're having a short break and then we'll be back with more Perth stories here on Undercurrent.